How can an ancient book like the Bible be relevant today? Many people in our culture, and even in our churches, can think that the Bible is old and outdated and it has no relevance for us today. And why should we give our lives and our time and our attention to something that was written by a bunch of guys 2,000 plus years ago? But is this really a good objection to say that the Bible is not relevant just because it's old? I don't think so. And let me give a few reasons for that. Number one, C.S. Lewis talked about that modern people often suffer from what he calls chronological snobbery. And what he means by that is that we think that just because we are further along in time, that we know more things or know more truth or know how to live more than someone who lived 100, 200, or 1,000 years ago. So newer is not always better, is what Lewis is arguing. And I think he's right. We can, as human beings, we've seen this in cultures, we can progress morally, spiritually, etc., or we can regress and go backwards. And we've seen that happen with nation after nation and culture after culture. So that's one, I think, motive that brings out this objection that the Bible is not relevant. Another one is that we just, in our current Western cultural context, we just don't like tradition. So anything that smacks of authority or tradition, we push back against. And I think we've seen abuses of tradition or authority, even in the church. And so because we've seen abuses, we tend to, in our culture, push back against that. We live in a very self-autonomy sort of age. But again, that's not really a valid objection because truth is truth. And so if a tradition has been abused, it doesn't mean that tradition was bad. Or if a truth or a book or whatever has been abused, it doesn't mean that that book or authority or tradition or whatever is bad. So I think really to get to the crux of answering this question, is the Bible relevant today, even though it was written 2,000 years ago? Well, I think it's a pretty easy answer. If the Bible is not true, if it is not from God and is not true, then no, it's not relevant at all. It really has no authority over our lives. It should have no real bearing on how we live. It may be a book of interest, something you'd like to read. But if the Bible is true, if it is from God, then it has all the relevance in the world. So truth is timeless. And so whether that truth was written 2,000 years ago or it was written today, the fact that it's truth makes it relevant. So just because the Bible is old does not mean that it's not relevant. And we have all the reasons in the world to think that the Bible is true and that it is from God. And it is for these reasons we also know that it is supremely relevant to us today.